Hello, and welcome back to Felony Spectator. I am your host, Heather. On today's episode, we're talking about the murder of Lisa Marnderach and her 17-month-old daughter. Lisa was born September 30th, 1965, as Lisa Augustinelli. When she was 10 years old, she met James Manderach and knew she would one day marry him. They remained friends growing up, and James actually married another woman first. After his divorce, Lisa and James, also referred to as Jimmy by his friends, would finally start dating and fell madly in love. They would get married in 1992. Lisa would be hired as an assembly line worker after graduation, but she worked her way up the ladder and became a forklift operator for that same company. Jimmy worked for Resco Products in janitorial services, but Jimmy and Lisa would also make extra money on weekends cleaning offices. Lisa was a member of St. Clair Lutheran Church in Linfield and volunteered for Meals on Wheels. She was a really kind and caring person who her friends adored. On February 4th, 1994, Lisa and Jimmy welcomed their daughter, Devon Marie, into their family. Lisa loved being a mom so much that she would tell her friends that she couldn't wait to have more children right away. Caleb Fairley was a 21-year-old college student who would attend Montgomery County Community College in Pennsylvania. Caleb had decided not to enroll in the following semester at school, and a neighbor would recall that Caleb had told her that he couldn't go back to school because he didn't have enough money. He was also trying to save up to move out of his parents' home. Caleb didn't have a lot of friends growing up and mostly kept to himself. Kids in high school said that he was just odd. Not many people really paid attention to him, and if they did, it was usually just to pick on him. He would be described as socially awkward, timid, and wasn't really into girls. Caleb briefly worked at a restaurant after high school in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and was picked on there as well by coworkers. And Caleb never really got angry or tried to hurt anyone. Instead, he just meekly asked to be left alone. Caleb was also interested in vampires and the game Dungeons & Dragons, amongst other things that we will get into later. Now, Caleb also suffered from a family tragedy in 1989 when he lost his little 4-year-old brother to a gunshot accident. I couldn't find a lot of details on this, except that the 4-year-old shot himself with an unattended loaded gun. The gun belonged to James Fairley, Caleb's father. It's unknown why the gun was left unattended around a 4-year-old, but people would say that Caleb never really got over the loss of his brother. He always just seemed really sad afterwards. I also read that in 1992, Caleb allegedly harassed 2 females and grabbed them inappropriately. Caleb was never charged with this incident, and nothing more has been said. It is also reported that Caleb hated his mother. An ex-girlfriend of Caleb, Melissa Arcadia, said that Caleb's mother was a, quote, control freak, and apparently called him names like stupid and told him that he could never do anything right, and she would just curse at him all the time. Caleb had a better relationship with his father and would often work for his father at his father's pharmacy, until his mother opened a new children's store in 1995 called Your Kids and Mine, in which she allowed Caleb to be the store manager. On September 10th, 1995, Lisa would take baby Devon to Collegeville Shopping Center because she wanted to check out this new children's store. Your Kids and Mine had only been open for a few weeks, so she was really excited to go. Lisa told James, her husband, exactly where she was going and that she wouldn't be home late. James would give his daughter some pretzels, said goodbye, and sat down to watch some football. Lisa and Devon left their home approximately 3 p.m., arriving at the store about 15 minutes later. Caleb was working at Your Kids and Mine by himself, as he did many times since the store opened. He had been talking on the phone with his mother when Lisa had entered the store around 3:15. Caleb would tell his mother that he had to get off the phone because he had customers. Another customer in the store, Heather Vernon, would later remember that Caleb had been staring at both Heather and Lisa so intently that it made her very, very uncomfortable. Heather did in fact leave, but when Caleb noticed that Lisa and her baby were the only ones left in the store, he would go up front and lock them in. After he locked the door, making sure there was no way for Lisa to leave, he would attempt to sexually assault Lisa. Lisa resisted and tried to fight back, which angered Caleb, so he strangled Lisa to death. Then he turned to baby Devon and strangled her to death too. Now, killing Lisa and baby Devon wasn't enough for Caleb. He was determined to have sex, so he would proceed to have intercourse with Lisa's dead body before taking them out of the store to dispose of them. Once he was done dumping their bodies in semi-remote places, he would attend the Electric Hellfire concert, which he had originally planned to do after work with his friends. Now, Lisa's husband naturally became worried when Lisa didn't return home from the mall with their daughter. So around 9 p.m., he finally called police. He informed them that his wife went around 3 p.m., and as far as he knew, she was only going to go to Your Kids and Mine, but she still hadn't come home from Collegeville Shopping Center. He also told police that she had driven their 1988 Pontiac Firebird. Police would go to the mall and would notice Lisa's Firebird still parked outside the store, seemingly untouched. Since Lisa had mentioned the store Your Kids and Mine specifically, police got permission to go through the children's store, and they would find adult videotapes, some with blood on them, and peepholes in the dressing rooms. They also found what looked like blood on the floor as well as a large wet spot. Meanwhile, Devon's body would be found near a hiking path in Valley Forge National Park by hikers. Unfortunately, Lisa's body was not with the baby. The autopsy would later reveal that Devon had a broken clavicle and a bruised scalp. Caleb would be brought in for questioning, and while at the station, he was wearing a thick coat of makeup on his face. Detectives told him to wipe it off, which then exposed over 10 cuts to his face, which looked like they could have been scratched by fingernails. Caleb explained that he went into a mosh pit at the Asylum Club in Philadelphia with a friend, Christopher Leffler, and someone in the mosh pit had scratched him. Now, this could have been believable, except for the fact that there was blood found in the store where Lisa was last seen, so investigators would get a warrant to search Caleb's bedroom as well. Here they found a rather large collection of more pornographic videos, magazines, and appliances, whatever that means. In his room, they also saw a shirt with a vampire violently molesting a woman who had resembled Lisa Marnderach. It was also noted that Caleb was a member of the Asylum, a nightclub in Philadelphia, where it's popular to dress as vampires or in leather. Lots of people also wear heavy makeup, just like Caleb had at the police station. Police started to believe that Caleb was maybe acting out a fantasy of this portrayal of the vampire being molested on his shirt. Now, remember, this was 1995, so cosplay or even goth wasn't really accepted. No shame to those who like goth, leather, or vampires, but this was the 90s. Things were very different. And this shirt, along with his makeup and love for vampires, was probably quite shocking. Caleb also liked to play role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. And for some reason, the media and lots of people in general really thought that this game was evil. After speaking with Caleb, the police offered his attorney a deal. It was obvious that Caleb had something to do with the murders, but they needed Caleb to speak. The deal was if Caleb gave the location of Lisa's body, they would take the death penalty off the table. And this was a difficult decision to make because the nature of what Caleb did was absolutely horrific, and he deserved the death penalty. And police knew there would be backlash from the community, but the authorities really wanted to make sure that they could get Lisa's body right away. They needed to gather all the necessary forensic information as soon as possible off of her body to help convict Caleb. The longer that time goes on, the harder it is to get usable DNA, especially in the 90s. Things weren't as advanced as they are today. Caleb's attorney discussed the deal with Caleb, and they agreed that he would give the investigators some information, which led them near a wooded area behind an abandoned building in King of Prussia. I think Caleb's attorneys were hoping that there wouldn't be forensic evidence left on Lisa's body and decided to go ahead with revealing this location. And this information that Caleb gave his attorney regarding Lisa's location also couldn't be used in court due to client-attorney privilege, which sounds crazy, but it's the law. Now, even though Lisa's body was found, Caleb was actually let go from custody because there still wasn't enough forensic evidence. Caleb was still being evasive, and with only circumstantial evidence, the police couldn't make an arrest, even though they knew it was him. The evidence they did have at this point was blood on the carpet, long, dark strands of hair which resembled Lisa's. This hair also had roots still attached from the scalp. Similar strands of hair were also found in the vacuum cleaner at the store, as well as Caleb's car. Remember Christopher Loeffler, the friend who he went to the concert with? Well, he was told by Caleb to lie, which he did at first, but then signed an affidavit saying that he was told to lie by Caleb. Caleb had asked Christopher to back up his story about the mosh pit. Caleb had told Christopher that he actually got them from breaking up a fight between 6 people which broke out behind his parents' store. I don't know why Christopher would need to lie about a fight, but that was his excuse. Luckily, DNA under Lisa's fingernails would come back to be Caleb's. A stain on Caleb's shirt also confirmed to be DNA from Lisa as well. Remember the wet spot on the floor of the store? Well, that would later be identified as saliva from Lisa. All the blood in the store was also confirmed to be either Lisa or baby Devon's. Police officially arrested Caleb, and he would be charged with double murder, aggravated assault, theft, and abuse of a corpse. Caleb originally pled not guilty, but after medical experts advised that he was sane and competent to stand trial, he changed his plea to guilty. He insisted it wasn't premeditated. His decision to harm Lisa was in a split second when the opportunity arose. Caleb was tried and convicted on those 2 counts of first-degree murder and received 2 life sentences. At his sentencing, he said, quote, "I know what I did that day was inexcusable. I do not blame society. I do not know why I did what I did, but I did do it." End quote. James, Lisa's husband, would later sue Caleb's parents because he felt that Caleb never should have been in charge of running a children's store, especially since they knew Caleb had, quote, "numerous assertive contacts with females," end quote. Limerick Township in Pennsylvania would build a new park and name the playground section Manderach Memorial Playground in honor of baby Devon. Caleb has tried to appeal without success and will probably remain behind bars until he dies. My thoughts? I would love to know how he was able to store adult films and drill peepholes into the change rooms of a brand new store without his parents being aware. How did his mother not notice? I question whether she was ever at her own store. She hasn't spoke out as far as we know, so we don't really know the thought process behind allowing her son to manage their brand new store. Perhaps they didn't really realize how bad his mental state was, and hindsight is 20/20. I can only assume that they didn't think he'd get himself into trouble at a kid's clothing store, and maybe the responsibility would have helped him. I don't know. Looking back at old articles, media really loved to focus on the fact that Caleb was into the darker side. Caleb was considered evil based on his interests. And I've said this before, but I think crimes people commit is not the byproduct of the music they listen to or the games that they play, like Dungeons and Dragons. Caleb had other issues, and it was only a matter of time before he hurt somebody. This isn't really related to the case per se, but when I was doing research, I couldn't help but think of Stranger Things and Eddie Munson. The band Caleb was going to see that night was the Electric Hellfire Club, and he was also into Dungeons and Dragons. And Caleb was also an outcast. I know it said that Eddie was based on Damien Eccles from the West Memphis 3, but maybe they also borrowed some ideas from Caleb's case as well. Anyway, thoughts? Do you think Dungeons and Dragons or vampires will push someone into murder? Was it right that the death penalty was taken off the table? Or what's your opinion on this case in general? I would love to know. That's it for today. Thanks again for joining me here at Felony Spectator, and we'll see you again soon.